I do think there's a good framework for thinking is physics, the sort of first principles reasoning. What I mean by that is boil things down to their fundamental truths and reason up from there, as opposed to reasoning by analogy. Through most of our life, we get through life by reasoning by analogy, which essentially means kind of copying what other people do with slight variations. And you have to do that, otherwise it's mentally you wouldn't be able to get through the day. But when you want to do something new, you have to apply the physics approach.
Give me an example of that. Like, what's one thing that you've done that on that you feel has worked for you?
Sure. So somebody could say, in fact, people do, that battery packs are really expensive, and that's just the way they'll always be, because that's the way they've been in the past. You're like, well, no, that's pretty dumb. And you say, no, okay, well, what are the batteries made of? So first principles would be to say, okay, what are the material constituents of the batteries? Mm-hmm. What is the spot market value of the material constituents? So you can say, okay, it's got cobalt, nickel, aluminum, carbon, and some polymers for separation, and a steel can. So break that down on a material basis and say, okay, what if we bought that in the London Metal Exchange, what would each of those things cost? Like, oh, geez, it's like $80 per kilowatt hour. Mm-hmm. So clearly, you just need to think of clever ways to take those materials and combine them into the shape of a battery cell, and you can have batteries that are much, much cheaper than anyone realizes.
Rockets were super expensive, and the cost per pound or kilogram to orbit had actually gone up over the years, not down. So after my second or third trip back from Russia, I was like, whoa, there's got to be a way to build rockets. There's got to be a way to solve this rocket problem. I started reading a lot of books on rockets and did sort of a first principles analysis of a rocket. Just broke down the materials that are in a rocket, what would it cost to buy those materials, what versus the price of the rocket, and there's a gigantic difference between the raw material cost of the rocket and the finished cost of the rocket. So there must be something wrong happening in going from the constituent atoms to the final shape. And I found that certainly to be true.
And then, just in general, critical thinking is good. Examining whether you have the correct axioms, are the most applicable axioms, does the logic necessarily connect, and then what are the range of probable outcomes? Outcomes are usually not deterministic; they're a range, and so you want to figure out what those probabilities are, and make sure, ideally, that you're the house. It's fine to gamble so long as you're the house.